Today I want to talk about a topic that's perhaps kind of left to the side, and it's how do you build a practice? How do you actually roll with building up something beyond just being a DBA? And so my name's Adrian Sullivan. I'm a principal consultant for modern data practice in Auckland, New Zealand. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter at any time. I also run the Auckland SQL user group, and my email is available for anyone who wants to talk about this or just stuff in general. I want to speak about this and I want to talk about practice stuff because it's the one thing that I feel folks don't talk about, kind of get left behind. It's not the hottest topic, but it's a topic that I'm quite passionate about, and so I want to talk about what this means for me and what this might mean for someone like you. If you're interested in something like this, as I said, reach out. So the nice part of this is no one talks about this, so I can say pretty much whatever I want, and no one will know whether I speak the right thing or the wrong thing. So I'll try and build the basics of the discussion really simply, and then on top of that, talk about the 5 main steps on what a practice is or how to build one. And we'll start with, what is a practice? How do we define what a practice is? It's easy in a legal field or medical field. You hear folks talk about their practice and what they do, but it's simply a bunch of professionals offering a service, and it's as simple as that. So that mistake we make is we kind of focus on what we do as technologists, and it's hard to move out into a commercial platform and start speaking about this in terms of what is a practice, how do we build this, how do we roll with this. It can be pretty complicated and daunting because it requires a different way of thinking, which is not technology based. So of all the stuff we do, for me running a practice, very little of that is actually sitting down and doing tech stuff, although it's fun. So it needs to define what are we trying to do, what are we trying to achieve. So you might be a consultant trying to up your game. So I want to move into a high level. I want to become a principal or go into SVP position. You might be a DBA sitting in an in-house position, thinking of where does your career lie, what do you want to learn, and those different teams the one might act as a practice, the one might not, but we're all offering a service to a client. The client might be internal, client might be external. So you have to think about, what is a practice? Who do I work with? Are we professionals? And do we want to offer a professional service to whoever's paying us to do the stuff? And that's important. It's really something to think about. And it might be at a bit more mature career level, but it's something that you can start thinking about. Even if you're an intermediate DBA or if you're an accidental DBA, thinking about the end goal makes it easy for us to achieve that. So listen, this is it's a pretty dense topic. So I want to break it down into what is $1 million practice? How do you measure that? And from a really easy perspective, this is $1 million per year revenue. So in 1 year, you make $1 million. Sounds really great, but if it was $1 million in your pocket, life would be pretty peachy. On a best case scenario, from $1 million, you're making a margin or profit of $250,000, and that can be as a practice. So when we're talking about $1 million practice, it's only $1 million revenue. It's not $1 million profit. But in its own sense, that's a sizable practice at something that's achievable. I'm not saying $100 million practice. It's a bit harder. But when you define these really simple steps, a simple target such as revenue, and say, well, I want for my team and my folks, so we make $1 million. It's an easy revenue target. It makes it simple. Simple things are easy to follow. Now, there's some caveats around this information. For all intents and purposes, this is for entertainment only. The numbers and values I give here are not related to any real numbers. There are some legal issues around that, but and when you look at margins, when I say 20 to 25%, that's generally an average. So that might be in your market, in your city, you might be okay charging a 35% margin. If you're going to knock on your competitors' doors and ask them how much money you're making, they're not going to tell you. So this is my best guess in terms of the market that I deal with. Now, my market's pretty small, so $1 million practice in a market such as Auckland in New Zealand. We 1.5 million people. We got 4 or 5 competitors in this particular market. Most of them are a lot larger than we are. So this differs on market by market. It differs based on what's currently happening in your market. Now, we're going through a very challenging time with COVID. That affects businesses. That affects profit margins. So when you think about how large a business is or your revenue is, $1 million, it's a nice measure. I'm expecting it, we're going to have a little dip, but I can measure my dip in revenue easy because it's a simple number I'm trying to follow. Yes, there's other stuff you can do, but keep it simple. That's how I define what a $1 million practice looks like. In order to get to said $1 million practice, there's many ways. There's you can run an acquisition and buy someone who has an existing business. It's an easy option, and a lot of that happens where folks get bought over. But if you're in a position where you don't get bought over, or you can't buy something off the shelf, you have to sit down really hard and think about what are the 5 steps that I can do to get there. Now, I pick 5 because it's simple. I got 5 fingers, so it's easy for me to kind of pick up my tasks. It doesn't have to be super complicated. So 5 simple, high-level steps that I followed to build my practice, and it's something that I believe anyone can do. Honestly, if I can do it, pretty much anyone can. Okay. It's really simple. You have before you can go into building something, you have to pick and define what is it that you want to do. So choose your speciality, define what you want to do. You have to pick the right partners to support you in doing that work. Only when you have the right partners and you know what you want to do, can you start carving out services that you want to sell or offer back to the market. Once you know what those services are, then you can start marketing them. You can start setting them off, putting some branding around that, putting some collateral around that, putting a nice story. Stories are really good. Putting a nice story around it, and then pushing that out to the rest of the world or your local city in most cases. Once you have all of that, then you can look around. Is my team capable of delivering those services? Do I have the right people? Do I have the right support engineers? Do I have the right folks to support me to deliver those services through my partners in my chosen speciality? It's really simple steps. I'll expand a bit about them as we progress through this, but the core of this is make it simple. When we try and overcomplicate these things is when we fail. So we want to make it nice and simple, easy to remember and simple to remeasure on a recurring basis. This is a big project. When you build a practice, we want to acquire practice, when you want to, add some vertical integration or horizontal integration, you want to offer different service. It can become overwhelming. You might not achieve a start because you're so concerned about what you want to do. So when you boil it down is when you can actually focus and get the right folks behind you. It's really important to, from my perspective, decide on what is it that I want to achieve? What is it that I want to do? What is a service I want to offer? Because in a year from now, in 2 years from now, in 5 years from now, I'm going to have my investors, I'm going to have my SVPs, I'm going to have my CEOs, CIOs ask me, did we achieve the goal we set out to do? Might be your business partner. Did we achieve what we wanted to do? And the only way that you know what you want to achieve is if you write it down. If you say, well, this is why I am doing this. This is why I am building this practice. So I like to start with a really simple shopping list and say, well, am I doing this because of social stuff? I want more employment, so social good. Is it just for profitability? Is it just for making more money? Why am I doing this? And those steps would allow you to define your success as you progress through this. Now, for us, for me, I wanted to offer the best SQL managed services there because there was a weakness in the market. There weren't people offering great services here. I'm a DBA. I want to make sure stuff works. So I had a chat with the business I was working at. I'm like, guys, come on, we really need to make a service, make something that we can sell. I want customers to be happy and customers to be safe. And that's our goal. That's why we started this. And it's easy to tick off. Can I look at all my customers? Are they happy with the safety of their databases? Yes, done that. And folks ask me, yes, we've done that. We achieved that goal. What is our next goal? Let's employ some more folks. Let's do some more social good. Let's give away stuff. You move to the next achievement. As you mark them off, if you don't define those goals before you start a practice or grow out a practice, you likely fail because you don't know where you're going. Okay, so it's easy. So, okay, Adrian, I understand. It's super easy. So make a shopping list. Right? So shopping list of what is it we want to do? Yeah, we want to become profitable. We're going to do some social good, make our clients happy. Simple, right? It is simple. When you overcomplicate this, when we make our goals as a practice delivering a service complicated, it's really hard to measure what we're trying to achieve. And when measuring becomes difficult, then it becomes a smoke and mirrors game. And you don't want to do smoke and mirrors internally. You certainly don't want to present that out to your client. And your client, as I said, can be an internal client. You can be a DBA team internally in a client, but you're offering your services to someone. You have to look professional. You have to act professional. You have to look like you know what you're doing because that makes you think about what are you delivering. So a simple list, awesome. It doesn't have to be complicated. And once you have a simple list, you can start going through the 5 steps. I think they're quite simple, 5 simple steps. Start by picking a speciality. The reason this is so important is even as a DBA, we have enterprise DBAs, we have developer DBAs, we have BI, we have a wide spectrum of folks who want to offer different types of services. As an enterprise DBA, I'm concerned about building servers and high availability. That's not the same concerns that a BI specialist has. That's not the same concerns that a DevOps person has. So you have to pick what is it that makes you special. What are you going to do? What are you going to sell to the market? What is your core skills? If you cannot define that, then you can't build a service around that. If you cannot define that, then how are clients going to trust you? How are clients going to believe you? You have to talk to what you do, and that's different for different folks. Even as a DBA might choose to swap and go, I want to focus more on BI. But you have to mentally decide what is that speciality? What is my practice delivering to the world? I'd say, well, I'm a DBA, so I'm going to do DBA type services, backup, restore, and architecture, and performance tuning. That's all I want to do. You might say, well, I want to do SQL projects. I want to do new implementations, and it's all I want to touch. If you more BI, you can say, well, I want to focus on doing real BI reporting stuff, integration services. I want to work on that new Azure BI stuff. That defines the direction that you're going with your entire message you're presenting to the market. You might say, well, I want to do DevOps. DevOps, awesome. I love DevOps. That's very different than what I do. So it's a different offering. So you can't just simply take what I offer and say, well, I'm going to DevOpsify that. And it's now in a container. So now it's DevOps. You have to define what your specialty is and because that determines what you present back to the market. Once you've decided what your speciality is, you have to find a partner to help deliver that. Now, partners can be external, they can be internal as well. For the purposes of this particular topic, I'm talking about external partners. Because without the right people to support you, you'd have to have all those skills. I know many companies who offer DBA services, and they roll their own monitoring software. They got their own scripts, they got their own speciality. I get that, and I have absolute respect for them. But are they offering a DBA service, or are they acting as a software vendor? Are they writing their own code, writing their own software? That definitely changes how you work with this. It changes how you engage with your clients. Are you selling them your monitoring tool wrapped in a service, or are you simply selling them a service? You have to define that. And that's why I find it a lot easier to pick a partner and say, who's the best out there? Who can I work with best out there? And I can use their services or their tools, and I can build something around that. So that might be Sentry One. Love Sentry One. It's an awesome monitoring tool. It means I don't have to be a software vendor to have the best monitoring tools out there. So I ask myself, do my partners share my passion? Do they help me with marketing? And can I build the service around the products and services that they offer? So you have to constantly ask, when we start this, you have to constantly make sure that the partner that you pick in delivering your services is the right one. For me, that's simple. I do enterprise DBA work, so I want to use Sentry One. I have SQL Detect, which is a local partner. I have people that I can trust, that I can pick up the phone to, and who can help me achieve my goals. They have the same speciality as I have. They have the same desire and outcome as I have. That means that I can sell with greater passion when I talk to clients about this. And that's the important thing. If you don't have the right partners, then you're delivering something without that passion, without that support. Right? Now we've decided, easy, we have the right partner. We know what we want to do. Now we can start carving off what are the actual stuff that we're going to take to market. Now, it starts getting pretty dense from now. So sorry, it's a good time to have a little afternoon nap. When you start defining your offerings, things become very complicated. Up to now, you've only had to worry about what you do and who you're going to do it with. Now you have to start thinking about, where am I going to start making my money? What am I going to present back to clients that they can actually pick up? So it starts getting more interesting. I offer managed services. So managed services, security audits, performance tuning on SQL. Those are the things that I want to present back to clients. That's what I want to present back to the market. So I define everything that I do in terms of my daily actions, my weekly actions, what I'm learning about, if I'm learning Azure, if I'm learning AWS, that's defined by what I pick to go to market with. So if you're a consultant, you might be a consultant, you might be a contractor. You have to define what is the stuff you want to go to market with your partners. For me, that's simple. I offer managed service and some security audits and performance tuning. Those are my three offerings. And that allows me to leverage my partners and say, Sentry One helps me doing performance tuning. I can build a service around it. I can build an offering around it, something I can present back to market. That's really important because what you present back to market has to get wrapped in some collateral. You have to put marketing around it. You have to put a nice spiel around it. You have to tell a nice story for that particular service. And that's hard. If you have many services, many offerings, it's hard to have all of a brochure for every possible outcome of every service. It's a lot easier having fewer services, engaging with your client, showing value. And your client then comes back and says, I really appreciate what you do on SQL managed services. Please, can you do some performance tuning on these servers? If you're a BI consultant, you're offering BI stuff, you might be going and saying, well, we developed a nice report, but from that report, maybe you want a Power App built on top of that. Maybe you want some Power BI built on top of that report. It's extended out. When you choose your core offerings, those offerings tie back to your discussions with your clients. And that's hard These things aren't easy. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. When you pick your offering, this is the fun bit. So for those of you who stuck around till now, this is where it gets really exciting. An offering is a commodity. It's a service. It's something you sell back. If you have enough experience to understand what you're actually doing, you've defined what your services, your speciality is, you've defined who your partners are. Now you can start crafting all these offerings and say, I know as a senior DBA, I understand what goes into doing a health check. I can start building up, what do I need to do to perform a health check? Am I going to run a script? Am I going to run a community script? Am I going to take all that information, put in a report? How much time do I spend doing that? So you critically look at every step you do in performing that specific action, and then you can wrap a price around it. So I know, for example, a health check, the minimum I'm willing to charge is $300. It's a professional service engagement. I might go up to $3,000 if it's a bit more complicated. But I know that my cost to deliver that specific service, it's about $750. So I know that there is some margin in there for me to make. It might be, I might be doing BI stuff. So how do I deliver a new report to a client? What's my price of delivering a report? Do I have an introductory price, a low price of $500, for example, and a high range of 2,000, and then I add a complexity modifier on top of that? It can become quite tricky. So I might make lower margins on fancy reports than I do on performing health checks. So I might wrap it as a package deal. But for every one of these offerings that I bring to market, I have to decide what's my price point, what's the actions going to be carried out, who's going to perform those actions, and then how are we going to make sure the client's happy with what was delivered. These are things you have to do for every offering you bring to market. Otherwise, you won't know what your margins are. You won't know, am I making what I'm expecting to make? Can I go talk with my SVP and say, yeah, we're still happy with what we're doing. We need more funding. We need to hire more folks, or we overstaffed. We need to add more offerings. The only way you can answer those questions is if you know what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. If this is open-ended and you say, well, I'll do anything, it makes it very hard to determine what the cost is of an anything. Now, this takes time. This took me 3 years to define what my actions are, what our actual offerings look like. It doesn't have to happen overnight. It doesn't have to happen by Tuesday. You have a list of 100 offerings that you're going to start narrowing down. This grows and changes. It's easier to start with a core set of offerings and revisit them than it is to try and get it right on day one. Now, the important thing to consider is it's super hard to go up in pricing. So if you don't have a service established already, you have to kind of guess, get a feeler for what is the price in the market for doing a certain service. It's a lot easier to go at a $2,000 service and discount it to $1,000 and say for every client, 50% discount. It's really cool. It's like a winter discount for you. We love what you guys do. That's a lot easier discussion to have with anyone wanting to use your services than it is to say, well, we've gone from $2,000 to $4,000 because we have this super amazing other thing we're adding on. So what makes this hard is not just defining the services, but defining the price points. Pick up the phone, find your competitors, get someone else to phone, find out what's the price in your market for the services you offer. You might find something and you say, well, I'm really good at doing health checks. In fact, I can do health checks cheaper than anyone else can, but that doesn't mean that I have to charge a lesser price. You can still charge a premium price for a service that you can deliver really well. That's why you really need to pick your speciality, that it fits something that you're passionate about, because you're not going to put in the effort to make sure you get the right price point and the right outcome to a client for everything you do. Now, again, this kind of covers a wide range of different things. It's not just IT specific, but this is something that you can do if you're in IT, if you're in SQL, if you're DBA, if you're a BI person. You can do this. We just need to work on what's that framework that this looks like, right? So now we have our health check. really good at it. We know we can do it for super cheap, $750. That's the cost of my resource. That's the cost of my software. That's the cost of the effort that I put in, and including the meeting to present this to the client. But you know what? I'm going to do it at $300 because I have decided for this month, I'm going to lose money on my health checks because I want to sell more managed services. But I cannot make that decision if I don't know how much each one of these services are costing me, right? You're better off pitching high, so pitching at $3,000 because you're unsure, discounting that price and revisiting that offer every couple of months. And you can do that on any one of your services. But unless you define the services, unless you define what your costs are on the services, this becomes impossible to measure. That's why defining your offering is super important. You can take a long time. You can take a year, 2 years to define exactly what you want to offer to the market, and it might change. There might be an event that happens that changes your offering, the nature of your offering. COVID's a great example of that. It changes how we deliver our managed services to our clients. It changes that. We have to be cognizant of that. We have to be aware of that. We have to revisit our margin on what we're offering so we can go back to clients and say, clients, we know it's a tough time. How about we discount you? Because we know we can actually afford that. You never want to be in a position where you discount something and you're running at a loss for providing that service. That's not a healthy position to be in. That means that $1 million revenue, you might achieve that, but you might be losing money for your business. That's not ideal. So it's really important to think about the offerings that you're presenting back to the market. Once you've defined what your offerings are, let's go with health check. I know that this health check is the best health check in the world. I know this thing's amazing. It's going to change people's lives. When you have that and you understand what your offering is, then you can start presenting this out and wrap a story around that. You can get folks to talk about how your health check changed their lives. I've got a great story about a client who worked on for licensing. We did a health check. The health check led into us seeing that they underutilizing their CPU. The CPU is very, 8 or 16 CPUs on their server. They're using 5% of those CPUs. Okay, so we're going to take this health check and we're going to change that story into a licensing reduction. So we've went in with a health check, changed that in assisting them to reduce their licensing exposure. And from reducing their licensing exposure, now we have a different story to tell. Same service, same offering, it's a health check, but we're presenting that in a different story to the rest of the world. So that our clients can look at us and say, I have that pain as well. That's hurting me. I know licensing is very expensive for me. Can you help me with reducing my licensing? Then a client speaks to us and we say, yeah, of course we can. We're really good at that. How about we start with a health check and then we can evaluate your environment and see if we can then reduce your licensing. So we're using our existing offers to tell different stories. And this is hard. This is something that, let's say, normal DBAs aren't particularly well skilled for. So that's why it's important to pick your partner. Picking your partner means when you want to market, we can tell a story that fits the specific thing we want to talk about. And we can enhance that story. That's all you want. When you're delivering these services, you want to go out and speak to a client on something that you're passionate about, something that you love doing. If it happens to be SQL, that's awesome. But the client needs to buy into you delivering this wonderful package, this wonderful service, this wonderful offering. You can only do that if you've picked the right speciality, if you've picked the right partners, if you've defined your offering, and if you then sit in front of a client, giving them a solution to a problem that they're having. That's really important. If you haven't taken those steps, and if you just wake up one day and say, oh, I think I don't offer a service, if you simply do that, then when you come to marketing your offer, that's when things start falling apart because you don't know what it is that you're actually doing. You have to think about what is the problem that I'm solving for my clients and how does my offering solve those problems. So when you get to understanding what you want to market, then you can start picking how are you going to go about marketing it. What's your budget? Who's your ideal client? Your ideal client might not be on Twitter. Your ideal client might not watch YouTube videos. Your ideal client might not be on Facebook. Where's your client? So unless you define how much money you need to spend on your marketing and where your client is, then you cannot market that offering to that client. What I try and do is I try segregation. So I've got a different type of offering I'm offering to clients, for example, on LinkedIn. I have different discussions I'm having on Twitter, and we have different content that we're going to push into YouTube. Those are all aimed at different type of folks. We might say, well, for an IT manager on LinkedIn, we have a certain message. For a DBA on YouTube, we might have a different message. And those messages define how you get people interested in the services you're offering. So unless you think about it, this should never be unplanned. This should never be a case where I'm going to do a YouTube video. I think it's going to be awesome to do a YouTube video. You have to actually define the service. Once you define the service, you know how you're going to market to the client. Then you can say, well, I want to market this licensing production exercise to CXOs on LinkedIn. So I craft my own message around it and I sell it to them. You might have that same health check message, which you're presenting in terms of a diagnostic script that you're running on a little vlog on YouTube. Or you might have a summary of that, of I found these interesting things during a health check, that you present on Twitter. It's different messages that you give around that single product you're offering. Now, if you have 50 offerings, that's a lot of complexity you're adding to this. Which is why I say stick with simple offerings, keep it simple. You can always build out your things. But if you're making promises to clients, I'm doing security audit, I'm doing this audit, I'm doing that audit, you have to deliver on them. What you need to understand is in the market, when you have your practice, when you're running your practice, people look at you. They look at what you do. They look at how you're engaging with clients. How often are you presenting messages out there? Are you offering a consistent message? Are you changing your tune? These happen all the time. Clients look at this all the time. And again, even if it's internal, your internal team is getting looked at by the rest of the business. Finance is looking at, are you doing stuff on budget? Are you delivering services you're promising? Change between the two means just internal clients are, if you're internal, they're a lot more forgiving than if you're external. So if you have this marketing message that you can talk about, and you can repeat, and you can get this single, nice, simple message across on the right platform to the right people, that is gold. That helps you build that slow and steady stream. That helps you build trust and confidence with your clients. Because once you get a client, you don't want to let go of them. You want to keep on selling more services into the client and build them out. That's where marketing is so super important. Now it's great. We have our speciality, kind of know what we want to do. We know who our partners are. We know what our offerings are. You kind of have an idea of how we're going to market it. Now you can go, does my team allow me to deliver those offerings to the markets that I'm trying to penetrate, to the clients I'm trying to engage? Do they have the same speciality as I need to deliver? This is likely the most difficult step in this entire equation, because this is where you need to define, do you have the right skills? Can you give a task to someone else to deliver? Do you trust the people that are part of your team? Now, I can't tell you who you should trust and who you should give what to. Only you can do that. In your market, your market will decide whether the resources that you have access to can deliver those pieces of work. Now, your team might be internal, so you might have access to some engineers, so normal system admin engineers. You need access to DBAs, you need access to project managers, you need access to business analysts, you need access to a whole bunch of different folks. Depending on the size of your business, you need access to payroll, you need access to finance, you need access to a whole bunch of different things that you certainly didn't do last year. So it can be very overwhelming, which is why it's super important to pick the right partners. Partners, as I said, can be external and internal. If you're lucky, I'm super lucky. I'm in an existing business. There was a framework that existed for starting up a practice. Yes, it was very difficult, took a lot longer than expected, but I didn't have to hire someone in finance because we had a finance function. I didn't have to worry about hiring project managers. We had project managers. I didn't have to hire business analysts because we had business analysts. So doing a project was really easy. I had an engineering team, so I didn't have to worry about hiring engineers for delivering managed services. So the context in which you operate defines the team that you get to support you. If it wasn't the case that I had easy access to resources, I would likely have went to market. So if I know I'm hiring a sysadmin at $40 an hour, I need to make sure that if they perform an action, then I'm not losing money on that $40. I must be charging them out at $60 or $80 an hour for that task. There's a lot of complexity that goes into who touches the stuff that you're doing. That $80 you're charging a client might cost you $20 to bill to the client. All of a sudden that $40 for the sysadmin becomes really expensive. Are you catering all your costs for your team in the margin that you're delivering? Is because that impacts your price. So when you look at this team, when you look at, do I have the right folks? It might mean that putting more buns on seats might be costing you in terms of your margin because you haven't defined your services properly or your offerings properly. Or you have a resource that perhaps takes 3 times as long to deliver a certain task. Are you measuring that? It becomes exceptionally complicated with the team itself because it's people, it's real people, it's people in employment, it's their mortgages, it's their car repayments, it's their kids at school. You impact their lives with the decisions that you make. That's why a practice is so complicated. That's why people don't grow up and go to school and say, I want to be a DBA with my own practice one day. It's complicated. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. But if you follow simple steps, you can at least mitigate most of those risks. In the same way that you implement high availability, you have to have a high availability mindset in terms of what you're presenting to your clients, especially true from a team perspective. If you have one expert, then that's simply a capability. I have a capability to do health checks. Oh, it's great, awesome. Client's not going to give you money for capability. A client's not going to give you a contract, a 3-year contract to support them if you have one DBA. Okay, well, I haven't thought about that, have I? You need 3 people who can support something before you even consider it being a practice, because you should be able to lose one and still operate. Losing one, saying, might be sick, they might leave, they might get a better opportunity. You have to be able to present that to a client that, don't worry, client, if you engage my services with my practice, I can deliver that for you. If you're just doing SQL projects, that's less of a problem. I come in, I deliver a small project, I walk away. You might not need 3 or 4 people. You can be okay doing 1. So what you're offering to the market will determine the team that you have to deliver that back to the market. You might, instead of hiring a finance person, outsource it. Instead of hiring a project manager, you might outsource it. It depends based on what? Based on your offering. So by the time you get to building your team, you know exactly what your offering is. How are you going to, with the tasks you require to deliver those offerings, and then you can attach the resources you need in order to deliver those offerings to your clients. And if you've done that successfully, you're well on your way to be massively profitable at a margin that you will be happy with. You don't have to make 100% profit. You don't have to have a gross profit of 70-80%. You have to define what is the margin that you're happy with. Can you charge that? And can you deliver that back to the client to make sure that you have business and the word of mouth in the economy and the market to ensure that you have ongoing work? I've seen many times where folks come with a great product, great service, they push it to the market really quickly, next 6 months, and then they disappear. because their clients aren't really work with them, no one's interested in doing business with them because they slappy or they're sloppy and then they incompetent and there's no trust in them. So it sometimes takes longer to establish those relationships in your market. But once you have them, they are worth gold. And you get that by defining the framework in which you operate your practice. And you'd be surprised how many resources there are to think about these things. Think about your practice. Think about what you're trying to deliver. So now comes the fun part. I'll do it right at the end. You understand your goal, understand what you want to do, understand where you want to go with your practice. How long will it take you to achieve these things? Will it take you 6 months? Hats off to you. If you can build $1 million practice in 6 months, I would give me a call. I'd love to chat to you because I can use some more advice. Realistically, this is a multi-year process. It doesn't necessarily have to just be you sitting there for multi-years, sitting at home for 5 years defining this. But when we pick our target or we pick our measure as revenue at the start of this, we can start tracking that measure and we can start tracking it over many years. And we can define every year, are we hitting our targets? Are we hitting our milestones? Are we hitting expectations? Do we have the right team to support us? Do we have the right offerings in place? So as we progress through this, you'll find that perhaps, again, as I said, this is, don't hold me on these numbers. You might find that in year one of offering your service, you turn over $150,000. Sounds great, but your costs of your resource, $140,000, cost of marketing was $30,000, cost of additional administration fees, $40,000, cost. All of a sudden, you're not really making money, you're bleeding money. So the expectation is that this is actually costing you more than you're making in the first year. It's okay if you're in a business, if someone can support that, if someone can fund that. It's a lot harder if you're a contractor or a freelancer trying to build something up. There's a lot of additional costs. So you might say, well, I got nice revenue, but I'm actually bleeding money on the other side. How long can you do that? So you might find that in year one, 150K turnover, that's all right. Year two, now I've built some momentum in the market. Now life is better. People are recognizing me. Now I've got some more clients. Now I'm seeing more organic growth come. Again, that's 2 years, 3 years. After 3 years, you might reach $1 million. Then you might have something like COVID. 2020 happens. You plan for that, right? Okay. Now all of a sudden you see a massive reduction in your revenue. It's not planned for, it's not budgeted for. Now you have 4 folks working for you and additional services. Do you have money in the bank to sustain you for this difficult time? Do you have the right partners? It might not be a software partner, it might be a financial services partner. Do you have the right people to support you during this time? Because you don't let go of your resources. You fought really hard to keep them and train them. You have to consider these things. Next year might be better, the next year after might be better still. We're still progressing, we still have a great market, we might still have a lot of interest from clients, we might be giving the right message out there, but are we still making money? Are we still positive? Are we still at the stage where folks are happy doing business with us and we're happy doing business with them? Might be that you have to close down. These are things you have to consider. And the answers are going to come from whether your margin is enough to cover your costs. Are you making money? Are you actually making money, giving back to your investors, giving back to your shareholders, making sure that everyone's happy with what you're doing? Make it harder is, again, back to your people. You might have a single employee in your first year. It might be yourself. Okay? In your second year, you're hiring more folks. This is full-time, so you might have some additional contractors on the side. You have to think about, okay, now we're on 4 folks, 4 people, great. Oh no, COVID happens. Okay, this is bad because now my margin calculations were based on a certain amount of work. Now I'm getting 30% less work, but I'm overstaffed. What do I do? Do I take a pay cut? Do I have my employees take a pay cut? Do I let someone go? The answers would come from the margin that you're making on the services you're selling. If you have strong annuity, if you're strong month-to-month recurring work from clients, contract work from clients, it's great. But you might have a drop in your professional services. Your projects might dry up. Do you have enough money in the bank to support you through that? Do you have the right partners that you can go to talk about? Do your partners believe in your ability to deliver your service? Do you have the passion because this is your speciality? All of these things tie together when you deliver this out to the market. And if you haven't thought about any one of these, you can get yourself into really difficult positions. If you've got 100 services and you're selling everything SQL, how are you going to measure your margins? How are you going to make sure that you're profitable on everything that you do? How do you know that the loss leaders that you're presenting are the ones that's actually making you money further down the road? You have to think about these things. So when you, especially when you think about what are the actions I need to perform, what are the actions, can I give these actions to a junior DBA and they still perform those actions? Can I give these actions to a sysadmin who's never been with this client or seen this client? Can they make the right decisions? How long will it take them to complete a task? If you don't do that for your offerings, then you might be bleeding money. You might be doing $1 million revenue. It's great, it's awesome, but you're actually on a loss of 13 or 15%. That's not a healthy position to be in. These are things that you can only do if you have the right measures in place, if you revisit those measures, and if you talk to the folks involved, your stakeholders in your business, in your practice. Getting that right groundswell, the right information, right discussions with them is how you make a success. It's how you go from $100,000 revenue to $1 million revenue. I'd like to think the same holds true from going from $1 million to $10 million, but no, not there just yet. But I'd imagine it's much of the same thing because you're building a framework. If you have a framework that's extensible, it's like Azure, right? Just scale up and down as you need. But in order to build that framework and become scalable requires a lot more effort than what you'd initially think about. So there are so many things to consider. It doesn't have to be complicated, right? Choose your speciality, pick your partner, define your services. Once you have that, you can market your offerings and build your team to support those offerings back in. If you have that simple picture, that simple framework to operate in, you know that you're going to achieve success because you know where you're going. It's not difficult. I believe that everyone can build $1 million practice. There's nothing standing in your way. It's a lot of effort. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. So it is hard. It requires effort, but it is worthwhile to do this because you're creating employment. You're giving great services to clients. You're doing a positive thing to the rest of the world by delivering something amazing. And once you have that in your head, you're going to make a success of this. Whatever your journey is, however you plan to do this, you can do this. There are frameworks that you can adopt in order to deliver them. Yes, it's not so sexy from a technical perspective. You don't get to build as many always-on availability groups as you want to do. You don't get to do so much performance tuning as you want to do. But you can grow something that's bigger than just you. You have something that you can make a bigger difference to the rest of the world. And that's what I value. And that feeds back into your passion. It feeds back into your passion for your speciality. It feeds back into your passion talking with your partners, in making better services, in offering better stuff to the market, in getting your team more excited. All of these things feed into each other all the time. And that simple framework can allow you to achieve this. So I'm very excited to see what you folks out there are doing. If you have any questions, let me know. Now's a good time. We're not going to bore you some more, but think about your margins. Think about, are you in a position where you're making money? And are you in a position where you're changing the world one day at a time? Thank you so much for bearing with me. Thanks for sharing a moment of my passion about how I feel about this. And as I said, sorry, I'm throwing my chest. Reach out, you're most welcome. If you have any questions, anything you guys want to know, please do so. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Adrian. That was really great. We don't have any questions at the moment, but I'm sure
Oh,
people.
well, it's all right. I don't expect a lot of questions. It's a very interesting topic. So if you go back home and you think about something, feel free to reach out, ask any questions that you have. I'm always willing to talk about this stuff.
Very good. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us today. Still time, guys. If you have any questions, pop them in the questions. But oh, somebody did. Hang on. Any tips for a one-man consulting business?
Pick your partners.
Pick your partners. Exactly.
We all start with doing one-man consulting. That's where all of this comes from, right? If you have the right partners in place, it might not be paid partners. It might be folks that you know, folks that you trust, folks you can reach out to, and those folks will allow you to have the next discussion. If you know where you're falling short, so I'm a one-man consulting fee. I know what I'm getting. I know what my margins are. I know what my revenue is. You can then start saying, is there a partner out there I can talk to? Can I offer different service? Can I add more value? Can I enter a different market? It's not, it doesn't just have to be yourself in your practice and what you're delivering out. There can be other folks that are not necessarily paid who can still help you and be of immense value to you in your journey. Even if it's bouncing ideas around or thinking about a new service or entering a different market. You don't have to hire someone. You can just speak to folks. Well, I mean, the user groups are great, right? Speak with a user group leader in your area. Speak to a user group leader in a different area, that a market you want to enter. That's why people offer their services for free, right? If you have questions, reach out to me. I mean, if you're willing to get bored, reach out to me. It's as a single person, you can still run a valid practice and understand your margins and your revenues and your costs. Your scalability is different, but it's totally fine, totally valid.
Very good. We had someone.
Thanks for the question. Like one question, yeah.
Yeah, and someone commented, "Thank you for the great session." So.
Well, thank you all for viewing. We appreciate your time.